with a talk titled, What's the Next Best Thing? It's not a better individual to be able to talk about what the next best thing is, because Peter Rubin is a senior editor at Wired magazine, a publication that's been around for a long time and constantly has their thumb on the digital pulse. Peter's a senior editor at Wired magazine, overseeing Wired's pulp culture and entertainment coverage. In June, Mr. Rubin wrote the definitive manifesto featuring Oculus founder Palmer Luckey, great name, which ushered in a new era in the awareness of virtual reality as the next computing and communications platform. Friends, put your hands together. Welcome to the stage, Wired's senior editor, Peter Rubin.
I usually need an excuse to come to Miami Beach. But when they asked me to come and talk about immersive technology, I jumped at the chance. This is something that I've been reporting on for a couple of years now, and culminated really last year in the story that we did on the company Oculus. So this is really just a few minutes. I want to give everyone a bit of a grounding, maybe talking about some terms today you're not necessarily familiar with, so this is just a little bit of a history lesson in virtual reality and augmented reality and kind of where we stand now and where we're going to be going. So how many of you have had a chance to try virtual or augmented reality in any form? That may be Google Glass or, okay, good, a lot of you, which is great. So in the beginning, virtual reality is something that's been researched for 30 or 40 years now. This was happening in NASA, this was happening in defense, this was happening in the private sector. But in the 90s, it really started to bubble up into our cultural imagination thanks to science fiction novels like Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, or if you've happened to read more recently the book Ready Player One, that gives you a sense of what virtual reality can do. And then it went from books into Hollywood. I don't know if any of you have seen the sci-fi classic Lawnmower Man, which embarrassed Stephen King so much he's sued to take his name taken off it, or of course Johnny Mnemonic starring everyone's favorite Keanu Reeves. But because of these movies, we ended up with a view of what virtual reality was going to be very soon. It wasn't necessarily accurate, as embodied by Michael Douglas in the movie Disclosure. So the way this looked to us when we came out of the movie theaters, we thought, great, we're going to have these gloves on, we're going to have this helmet on, we're going to be scanned in immediately, our hands, our faces are going to be rendered as perfect photo replicas of ourselves, we're going to have these fancy interfaces, and when we select things, these remarkable architectural facades are going to be generated out of nowhere, and we're going to get to walk around in them. That didn't happen. What really happened is something that looked a little bit more like this. It was, to use a word, janky. There were problems with the graphics, there were problems with the sound's not on, but if he'd be talking about how bad the resolution is, and this is the enduring image of what VR was to us. It was super, super cheesy. And it was this way for a long time. And I'm not talking about on the research side, I'm talking about what we civilians thought about it. Then along comes, oh, sorry, I'm a little ahead of myself. Some of the problems that were going on with virtual reality that made it seem like it was so far away from us when it really happened were, a lot of this is demonstrated by our friend in the NASA head-mounted display here from the 80s. Display. One of the key properties of virtual reality is that you need a field of vision that's wide enough to take up not just your immediate front vision, but also your periphery as well. That gives you a sense of immersion. And you also need a high-resolution display. These things were not really in plentiful supply in the 80s and 90s until much more recently. Also, the thing for virtual reality is the movement of your head needs to be tracked immaculately. It needs to be tracked instantaneously and with total precision, or else it's going to introduce something that's called latency. That is just delay. Latency is a fancy word for the lag between when you move your head and when the world in your virtual headset moves. Now, as you might be able to imagine, if you move your head and then a half second later the world that you're looking at moves, then your vestibular system, which is the balance system in your brain, and your visual system are going to be out of sync, and your brain is going to think you've been poisoned, so you're going to feel sick. It's like motion sickness, but you're not going anywhere, so it's called simulator sickness. It was a big problem. There was also ergonomics and weight. This thing was huge. There were headsets under development that needed a counterweight in the back because they were so heavy. Or they were so heavy they needed to be mounted to a wall. These were things that were huge obstacles to mainstream adoption. And of course, the real upshot is you ended up looking like a stormtrooper. This is not going to be on anyone's Christmas list. So, along comes this kid, Palmer Luckey. Palmer Luckey is 23 years old. He's worth approximately $8 gazillion because Palmer Luckey was homeschooled in Southern California in the Newport Beach or in the Long Beach area. And as a high schooler, he made a whole lot of money fixing iPhones when they first came out and there were no Genius bars, and modifying video game consoles for his friends. Made all this money, and he's a high school kid. He doesn't get into trouble. He says, what am I going to do with this money? I'm going to make the best gaming setup that I have. He was a big video gamer on his PC, and he wanted as immersive a game experience as possible. So he's putting money into it, and all of a sudden he comes across the idea of virtual reality, and he says, wait a minute, I remember this. I loved this as a kid. I loved the idea in cartoons that you could just go into a world. I loved the Matrix. So he starts looking around and he starts buying virtual reality units to see what the problems were. He buys them from medical auctions. He buys them from government auctions. He has an eBay alert set up. And over time he amasses an unbelievable collection of virtual reality headsets. And he finds that a lot of the problems that we've had and a lot of the problems that our friend with the NASA helmet had were things that may be able to be solved now because of advances in miniaturization and processor power and all these other kind of technical things that I'm going to try not to bore you with today. So he's talking about it on these message boards that he hangs out on online. He's like, guys, I think I'm going to build my own. I think I'm going to build my own, and I'm going to call it the Oculus Rift. Futuristic name. He got it from Jurassic Park. Meanwhile, there's another guy hanging out on these message boards whose name is John Carmack. John Carmack, if that name sounds familiar, is known as kind of one of the forefathers of 3D video gaming. If you've ever played Call of Duty, or ever watched someone play Call of Duty, or any other game that uses a first-person viewpoint to look at the world, that's 3D gaming. And back in the late 80s, John Carmack was part of a company called id that made these games a reality. And of course, 20 years later, that's about all people spend money on. So John Carmack's also on these message boards, and John Carmack has also had an abiding interest in virtual reality. In fact, that's why he and his cohort at id started making 3D games, because they wanted to get as close as they could to VR. So John Carmack reaches out to Palmer Luckey and he says, hey, these prototypes that you're making, could I bring one of these to this trade show I'm going to? Palmer Luckey says, sure. Ships it off to Texas to John Carmack. John Carmack then takes it to the E3 video game show in 2012 in Los Angeles. This is the biggest video game show in the country. It's where the entire industry goes. The idea that this kid had cracked virtual reality catches on like wildfire. It turns into a Kickstarter campaign which raises almost $1.5 million. Palmer Luckey partners with a bunch of people from other companies, and they form the actual company Oculus. This that you're looking at here is the second iteration of their development kit, the Oculus Rift. And what it does is, this just gives us an opportunity to talk about some of the things that they solved. First of all, there was tracking that we mentioned. They developed an all-in-one integrated motion sensing unit that samples what your head is doing at 1,000 times a second. And what that does is it's instantaneous, and it tells you with sub-millimeter precision where your head is, what direction it's moving, and I mean moving. And I mean it could be swiveling, and I mean it could be looking back and forth, and I mean it could be doing this. It's full, they call it 6 degrees of freedom movement. And then there's also the display, of course, with high-def displays, especially with the smartphone and tablet market. These became cheaper and cheaper and better. So they were able to get a high-def display in this with a very, very wide field of view, somewhere north of 90 degrees. They also had low latency. This is due in part to better displays. This is in part to some really processor-side wizardry that John Carmack was able to code in. They've been working on getting latency down below, and I know this is a tiny number, but 20 milliseconds. It's thought that below 20 milliseconds, you're not going to notice any lag, and so you're not going to feel any motion sickness or simulator sickness. And then, most important was price. If we need something that is going to get people to actually buy a device, it has to be cheap. We're tired of these multi-$1,000 VR systems. And so this was available to developers at $350. Now, they thought they wanted to keep the price around there, but they were worried about what they'd be able to do with that price. And then last year, based in large part on what he'd seen with this, that you may have heard about this, Mark Zuckerberg bought Oculus via Facebook for more than $2 billion. And now the Oculus team doesn't really have to worry about profit margins and cost of goods, and they're busy trying to shoehorn in all this incredible tech that was on their wish list of things they wanted to do, and it all culminated in this. This is the most recent prototype. I was first able to see this in September, but they brought it to the Consumer Electronics Show in January. This is January, 2 weeks ago in Vegas. If you got a chance to see this, then you probably understand what all this excitement is about. If you haven't gotten a chance to see it, maybe you heard about it. If you haven't heard about it, I urge you to see this if you possibly can. It's another quantum leap forward for them. It's much lighter, it's much more comfortable, it has a new display. They're working with Samsung. Samsung is getting them custom displays, a reason I'll get to in a second, but they also now have 360-degree tracking. They used to be very intent that this was going to be a seated experience at a desktop computer. Now, based on these little infrared LED things that you see studded on there, an external camera will be able to read those and see what you're doing at any point 1,000 times a second. And then now they're adding in positional audio, 3D immersive directional audio. This is something that I know Mary Spio is also working on with Next Galaxy, and they have a headset that they're developing with mobile that we'll talk more about at the next panel. But that's half of the immersive technology coin. The other half is augmented reality, and this is a huge, very exciting part. If you've ever used Google Glass, if you've ever seen somebody using a Nintendo 3DS handheld video game system, that uses a version of augmented reality. Now, the difference between the two is virtual reality places you in an artificial world. When you put it on, that's all you see. Augmented reality is kind of see-through glasses that overlays that artifice onto the world around you. This is the Cast AR system, which is something that's under development for the gaming industry. Basically, you're using special glasses and you have this kind of silver thing upon which these kind of holographic AR displays are beamed. And then, last year, Google threw $500 million at a company in South Florida called Magic Leap, based in large part on the promise that they're developing something that's going to do stuff like this. They're working with some really, really cool technology that basically tricks your retina into seeing things that aren't there. It's not any AR like we may have been used to from Nintendo or from Google Glass. And I've talked to people who've seen this. I haven't seen it myself, but they say it is mind-blowing, and you are going to need $500 million to realize this and get this to market. But they're not the only ones. There are a lot of companies that are working on AR. There may be some pretty enormous companies that may have some news very soon that I can't talk about, but you may be hearing about. So that's virtual reality and that's augmented reality, kind of where we are now. It's a very exciting time, but I want to run through a few ways that this is being leveraged right now so you can have a sense of where we're going and what some of these manifestations are. Now, Oculus was formed because of kids' desire to get a better video game setup. So obviously games were the first driver. This really got development going. This is a screenshot from a game called Elite Dangerous, which is a space exploration game. And one of the best things I can do to explain the VR experience to someone who hasn't done it is, imagine that you put this on and you're in a spaceship. That's fine, video games have done this, right? But if you're sitting in your chair at home, I think I just hit my mic, can you hear me? Okay. If you're sitting in your chair at home and you turn around, you're going to see the back part of your spaceship. I mean, it's all around you. You are in a 360-degree world that is seamless. It's really, the first time you do it, everything clicks into place and you're like, now I understand what people are talking about. So that's gaming, and based on the desktop PC thing that Oculus has been working on, Sony is also getting in the game. They're working on something they call Project Morpheus that is going to work with the PlayStation 4 console. A number of games under development for this. They recently unveiled this to the general population at a Sony event in Las Vegas last month. So up until now, it had really only been media and developers who had gotten a chance to see this. But now gamers are seeing this, and they're seeing what the promise is, and there's a lot of excitement around this. And then what's maybe the most quickly developing space in all of this is you have desktop PC, you have video game consoles, and now you have mobile. So on the high end of the spectrum, in December, Samsung released the Gear VR. Now, what's notable about this is that it was done in partnership with Oculus. Oculus helped them develop the onboard gyroscopic stuff that helps lower latency. John Carmack was a big part of that move. And then it works only with the Note 4, the Samsung Note 4 phablet, as it's called, the huge phone. Basically, you plug it in to it. You put the phone in, and there's your VR system. It's tetherless, it's mobile, and it's got some really exciting applications. So in return for Oculus's help to help Samsung develop their same thing. Samsung is developing custom displays for Oculus to be used in their consumer unit when it becomes available later this year, hopefully. Later this year, let's all keep our fingers crossed. And then on the lower end of the mobile spectrum, you have these open source devices like Google Cardboard that basically takes any Android smartphone, costs like 35 bucks, and then the optics company Zeiss, Carl Zeiss, has their $99 version. This is kind of a viewfinder model. This doesn't have a built-in everything. This is something that you put your phone into. So it's going to be not necessarily as seamless or as full-fledged an experience. It may introduce a bit more latency that people are working on, but still it's a vibrant development community right now that's working on all these mobile applications. And then beyond gaming, you have media viewing. Imagine having a video that you put on your phone, and then you put your Samsung Gear VR on, and you can watch that movie in a virtual theater, or you can watch it on the moon, or you can watch it floating in black space. These are all things that are available right now. I wish I had brought my Gear VR so I could show you guys out in the lobby. It's a pretty amazing thing, and it kind of gives you this immediate realization of why people are going to want this now. This is a throw it in your bag and bring it everywhere you go when you get on a plane. Don't watch your movies on that screen in the seat in front of you. Just watch it by yourself. You get IMAX quality and there's no one around you whispering or chewing popcorn. And then beyond media viewing, there's filmmaking. This is from a Cirque du Soleil experience that's available on the Samsung Gear VR. There's a company out of Montreal, these two guys, Paul and Felix, that are doing some really interesting things. There's also a company called Jaunt. There's a company called NextVR. There are a lot of people working to crack video for VR. This may be the killer app. Whether it's streaming or whether it's local files, and then you have all kinds of companies, especially in Hollywood, people are working to develop these kind of standalone VR experiences to get people excited about other stuff. This is taken from an experience that Paramount developed with a graphics effects company called Framestore for Christopher Nolan's movie Interstellar, which came out in November. Basically, they brought this around to movie theaters that were playing Interstellar in IMAX, and it puts you in a zero-G situation floating through the spaceship, and it really feels that way because they put you on these recliners and they add in these little kind of 4D effects. It's kind of the next iteration of these entertainment installations that you used to see that let you like parachute in a wind tunnel or pretend you were on a roller coaster. These are VR experiences now, and they're getting a lot of traction in places like South by Southwest, CES, E3, and then there's live music. There's a Coldplay concert that's available on the Samsung Gear VR. Paul McCartney was the last concert to be held at Candlestick Park last year. That was turned into a VR experience. So you can see that there's this massive groundswell of ability to help people experience something that they haven't been able to experience. They weren't able to be there, now they can be there. They can be on stage with Chris Martin or Paul McCartney listening to him sing. And then journalism, even, the Des Moines Register last year, as part of a series on the future of farming, they developed this little thing that you could use on the Oculus Rift to kind of poke around a farmstead in Iowa. I'm not saying it's the most exciting thing, but it gives you an immersive way to tell stories, and so the world of media is really excited about this as well. And then there's travel. Last year, Marriott developed a thing, an experience that let you experience what their great rooms were like, and then they would teleport you to a sand beach in Hawaii, or they would teleport you to the top of a skyscraper in London. You don't need that. You have the beach right outside. People who aren't lucky enough to live in Miami Beach are going to love this kind of thing. Virtual travel is going to be a really fun part of this. And then there's education. This is maybe some of our civic leaders who are out here touched on this. Education is one of the things I'm actually most excited about. This is a render from Seek, which is this kind of all-in-one shebang that Mary Spio and Next Galaxy is working on. They're trying to do entertainment and social and education, but I've also, in VR experiences, I've been face-to-face with Michelangelo's David, and I've been able to look at it from any angle. I've been able to hover up, look at the top of its head, and then get down and look at its feet, and I mean from this far away. Imagine a classroom of kids that doesn't have to fly to Paris to go to the Louvre. They all have headsets on, and they can look at the Mona Lisa from there. So this is just a taste of what's happening and what the next year, 2, 3 are going to be looking like. So I want to thank you for your time bearing with me. Tried to fit all that in my 15 allotted minutes. And now we're going to pivot from this right into our innovators panel. So allow me to get out my notes if you would. This is going to be best practices and key insights from some of our leaders. So I think we're going to have people coming out now. First is Dan Kui from Vuzix. Vuzix, which is an augmented reality smart glass company. He was former senior vice president of sales and marketing at Micro-Optical, which became known as MyView, which kind of became known as Google Glass. Google Glass's design draws heavily in very non-actionable ways on the work that Dan and his company did. Now Dan is at Vuzix, where he currently works on smart glasses and leveraging smart glass and augmented reality tech into the medical and enterprise sectors. And I believe we have a video here of Dan's work with Vuzix. Is that right, or am I waiting on those?
I guess she wants me to say roll the video. I don't even know what she showed me.
We'll see. And if they're not going to roll that, then I'll just go ahead and introduce our next panelist, and this is Elizabeth Barron at Ford. She's a technical specialist in virtual reality and advanced visualization. She helped develop Ford's immersive vehicle environment, which basically lets designers and engineers work in a car before it exists. They're working in a fully immersive, photorealistic version of that car they can design at will. Do you have a video you'd like to throw to Elizabeth?
I do. Roll the video.
Maybe we'll just save these all up and do like a TiVo season pass at the end of these. All right, next up we have, you've heard from her already once, Mary Spio, who's the founder of Next Galaxy Corporation. She's working on developing a consumer VR hub, as I mentioned, for education, entertainment, and brand marketing. She's also provided branding and technical guidance to numerous Fortune 500 companies, including Microsoft and Coca-Cola, and she is the reason we're all here today, so thank you, Mary. Do you have a video you'd like to throw to, or should we wait till... We're just going to roll it all. And we have, I didn't get a chance to meet Mats beforehand, so apologies if I butcher his name, Mats Johansson, who is the president and CEO of Eon Reality. He has more than 20 years of experience in 3D interactive simulations, and Eon maintains a large library of virtual reality experiences for training and educational purposes. Hi, Mats. And then, last but certainly not least, Sanjay Daswani from Avenue Planet, which is developing the first immersive virtual shopping experience, recreates physical shopping destinations in a virtual e-commerce environment, and he'll be able to tell us more about that. Thank you to everyone for coming. I am going to go get my notes and sit here. And I'm also, is that me? Oh, jeez. Hope that doesn't happen again. I want to thank you all for being here. And just to get things started, if we could go around and start with you, Dan, and working this way, if you could just tell us all a bit about who you are, what you do, and what your first involvement was in immersive technology.
Sure. Again, my name's Dan Quee, Vice President of Sales and Business Development for Vuzix Corporation. I've been doing wearable technology for about over 15 years now. Started off doing basically video glasses for entertainment, that sort of thing. As Peter had mentioned, our company was eventually sold off to Foxconn, and things ended up in Google's hands. But I've been out there looking at different ways of taking what you see now in the AR world, augmented reality, and the virtual reality world, and actually putting it and implementing it in real-world scenarios. And that's part of what I've been doing through the past year, is visiting our customers, working with them, collecting information, so that when we come to events like this, we can talk about reality instead of the hype that has surrounded the marketplace. And certainly for those of you who don't know anything about this, I heard there were some comments about that last night during dinner. We're here hopefully to help you understand where the reality happens to lie as well. Pardon?
So now we can roll the video?
Now you can roll video. Yeah, now I know what it is.
yours. Directions to Amsterdam Billiards, New York City.
What can I get you?
I'll have a whiskey.
Okay. Hey,
You don't have to be a Gemini, do you?
wait, how did you know that?
Just a hunch.
Oh, you have a hunch. Okay.
By the way, she probably had to opt in order to do that.
Okay, hi, I'm Elizabeth Barron, and I work at Ford Motor Company. And I've been doing immersive visualization in some form since 1999. And when I started working in that space, it was new to Ford, and I just started doing it. So I really created my own job. I made up my own title. I said, hey, this sounds good. Let's be a VR and advanced viz tech specialist. And they said, okay. So literally that is how I ended up doing what I'm doing. I had an interest in it. I always liked optics and light, and I used to sell cameras in high school and college, and so I've always had an interest in photography and visualization, and I ended up writing code and software, so Ford had their own CAD tool, so I did that for a while. And it led me to doing immersive viz. So when we started doing it, it was very awful by today's standards. It was magnetic tracking. You know, we of course produced vehicles, but we couldn't have any metal in the environment, so we had this wood car that we would scale and change, and we put sensors all over your body and totally invaded your space and privacy and your own self. And it was a little weird, but we laid a good foundation for what it could be, and where we're at now is just phenomenal. So now we have a beautiful lab that has 3 stations, and you'll see that in the video, but the lab is basically set up so that we can accommodate wide field of view through a cave, and then we have a physical vehicle that we scale and change, and then we wrap the virtual world around that, put you in a headset and let you see the world in that regard. So now if you need to touch like steering wheel, gas and brake, move around, you know, if you grab something, you'd actually grab something physical, but then what you see is the virtual, beautiful data. You won't see that in the video, but that's really important for you to know, because of course people are physically connected to their vehicles, and doing immersive visualization shouldn't discount the importance of being properly located and registered in your environment. And then we have another environment that's a big open room that looks empty, but inside of it is a virtual car. So it's a cool mix of technology, but between the 3 stations we can cover a lot of what we need to do. So I love it. I'm geeked every day I go into work. I'm like so jazzed to do jobs and like talk to all these cool people and talk to you, and you know, find out what new things we can do to leapfrog everybody and keep going. So I'll have you roll the video then, please.
We're here in the virtual space of the Product Development Center in Dearborn, Michigan. Here in the virtual lab, we assess high-definition renderings of the vehicle to overall improve quality and appeal of the vehicle.
In this space is a full-size virtual vehicle that we can evaluate for many different aspects of engineering and design, and look at it from the customer's perspective.
We put the head-mounted display over your eyes so that you have computer screens in front of your eyes effectively, and then we track where those are relative to this space, and then we put the CAD information over your eyes, and then we're tracking where you are relative to that CAD information. so you can walk around and interact with the entire vehicle.
And then we give you tools which are very similar to what you have in the physical world to look at the car and evaluate it for quality.
So the biggest benefit is the ability to have a realistic vehicle much sooner in the product development phase.
We can represent them in our software instantly to show many of the different possible combinations of builds that can come off the line, and then we can make educated decisions on whether or not this is going to be acceptable or require an engineering change.
The way we have set this up is we're able to collaborate globally. So we can have representatives who are immersed in their virtual space, and we're immersed in our virtual space, and we can look at each other and talk to each other in real time on different continents inside the same model. So we have upgraded the software capability as well as the hardware capability, and so the vehicles that we see now are incredibly lifelike. We're showing that stereoscopic view in real time to a person or multiple people around the world, and then also in 4K. The level of detail that we can focus on now is amazing, and the customers see that in the end.
Thank you.
So for me, I've been a 3D fan for the longest time, and a couple of years ago I had the opportunity to visit Facebook. And when I was up there, I heard that they had some kind of device that allowed you to see 3D, and I got a chance to try it on. It was the Oculus. I was very excited about it. So when I got back, I started looking around for the types of content that you would be able to see or experience on it, and I found that there was not a lot, and then 90% of what existed was, were all games, first-person shooters, slaying dragons, vanishing armies, and so on, which is really exciting, but I wanted to do something more, and seeing that there wasn't anything out there, having a digital cinema background, digital media delivery background, I started looking into how I could use the device, the Oculus, to be able to deliver experiences outside of gaming, beyond gaming, for education, for healthcare, for cinemas, for movies, and sports, and other types of entertainment. The other thing that I discovered was that if you found content, you needed to download every single app, a different app, for each piece of content that you wanted to be able to see, which was quite a lot. I had about 30 different apps on my laptop, which was too much. So I went full force out into putting together a team to build Seek, which is a first of its kind platform, a social VR platform that allows you to access all types of content, from sports to music and anything that you can imagine. But you just download that one app and you can access all types of content. The other thing that I discovered as we were building Seek is that most of the content that was out there, you had 3D content, but we were using just standard audio headphones, which really did not give a complete experience. So we came up with a 3D audio headphone, which I did a little show and tell. So we came up with a 3D audio headphone, which allows you to be able to have a 3D experience with 3D audio. And what I mean by that is reactional audio. So for example, if I'm in an experience and I'm walking into a movie theater, I shouldn't hear the audio loud when I'm in the hallway if the movie's only playing in the theater. So what our headphone allows you to do is to be able to react to the audio. So as you're walking in the hallway, you're not going to hear it. When you open the doors, you're going to hear it. What it also does is it allows you to have the audio coming from different directions. So in the case of advertising, I'm always thinking about brands. In the case of advertising, if I'm in an experience and there's an ad playing behind me, if I'm using a standard audio headphone, I'm not going to be able to react to it and turn. So that was the basis of the 3D audio headphone that we came up with. So we have Seek the platform and Seekers the 3D audio headphone, which together with any of the devices that we talked about creates a complete experience for virtual reality. This is a wired version now, but we're also focusing on a wireless version, which will be one of the first haptic controllers that allows you to take any Android phone. We're going to build one for iOS later on too, but take any Android phone and be able to navigate inside of a VR experience. And we have some demos out here too, so if anybody wants to come and check it out, but that's the short version of the long story. Thank you. Now roll the video. Here's the video before we do.
At Next Galaxy, we're building the first of its kind, fully immersive virtual reality platform for accessing entertainment and communication called Seek. Seek is actually a preview of what the next generation web or the metaverse is going to look like. It's a virtual gateway to any experience you can think of.
Seek's proprietary platform and virtual reality application will the vision of digital signal pioneer Mary Spiel, a former Boeing engineer and industry leader with multiple patents in delivery of cinema-grade content and demographic targeting.
Mary Spiel, take a look at how her childhood hobby turned out to be her true calling in life.
Seek is exciting for me for several reasons. To have the ability to see the Super Bowl from the owner's box, or to experience NASCAR from pit road or from inside the car, Seek opens up the doors to experiences that traditionally would be out of reach for most people. A great virtual reality experience starts with the content, and that includes the audio.
Using a standard headphone in VR or Web 360 environment is like watching a 3D movie without the glasses. The experience is simply not complete. That's why at Next Galaxy, we have come up with Seekers, the world's first fully integrated audio headphone that provides full cinematic acoustic immersion.
I'm most excited about Seekers because they allow me to kick back and just enjoy the experience. Having the freedom to navigate without being tied to the device makes it easy for anyone.
What I love about the 3D audio experience and what it adds to the virtual reality environment is that you are now part of that world. You are 3 miles from the launch pad. You are totally involved by the sound of that launch and how it reverberates around you. You can hear the sound of the ocean next to you. It is a truly amazing experience, and now you can be part of it.
Bonsai Caruso, 5-time Grammy-winning recording engineer, mixer. I just checked out the Seekers by Seek. Very good audio response. Low frequency response was really strong, big, actually feels like you're standing next to a train, for instance, and you feel the rumble. The fact that it does give you an experience on your head, that you connect with your head more than you could realize. It's insane. Yeah. Actually, the train was like, something was going on.
With Next Galaxy, which is a company that I think is going to bring something to the market that everybody's going to want. But I think it's something for fans. I think I'm a fan. I love to watch sports. And I think the people who love sports will get really closer and have an opportunity to see something they've never seen before.
Thanks, Mary, for inviting us to the conference. We really appreciate it. I had my first encounter with virtual reality in the mid-90s. Probably means I'm one of the older guys here. Also in the automotive industry, starting out with a driving simulator project, and over time got so involved in this. So in 1999, decided to start my own company, which is Eon Reality. And me and my partner, we have background in aerospace, energy, so we approached those markets initially. And we've been dealing with large immersive rooms and similar things that Elizabeth shared for many, many years. And we develop software primarily, and with that comes applications. So we've developed hundreds and hundreds of applications in a large number of industries over the years. A lot of our focus has been on knowledge transfer. That's what we're good at. Training technicians. working with educators to provide value. There's a lot of studies out there that show the value, how you can increase retention, how you can increase skills transfer. And if you go to energy companies, for instance, when it's a safety issue, retention becomes really, really important. You got to remember to do the procedure and so forth. We've also seen, and some of the panelists have touched on this already, that there's a lot of great devices out there. I mean, today we have devices from Vuzix. We heard Peter talk about everything from Oculus to Zeiss VR1, which is this one here. But the missing component, in our view, is really the applications. And that's something we worked with from the very beginning. We've gone to the extent, so we actually founded today 11 virtual reality schools around the world where we train developers. There's been a need for that, for ourselves, for our clients, and also the freelance community. So software, knowledge transfer, and the network, that's really to the core of E.ON. So I guess we'll roll the tape.
So I'm last, I suppose. Hello, everyone. My name is Sanjay Daswani. I'm co-founder of Avenue Planet. And unlike my distinguished panelist here, our experience in virtual reality has not been in the 90s. We only started working with virtual reality about a year ago. And predominantly, as Mary mentioned, where our focus is on the content. There are great devices out there. There's some great applications focused on industry. But our focus is on bringing content to the consumer using virtual reality that's applicable to everybody's daily life. So what is Avenue Planet? I'd like everybody just to think for a minute. Imagine the best shopping avenues in the world in one single place. Imagine all the best shops in those avenues. And more importantly, imagine the best in entertainment and service providers available in one single square. Now, through immersive technology, imagine yourselves in that environment, and that is Avenue Planet. So, Avenue Planet is redefining e-commerce. We're taking e-commerce to e-commerce experience. You know, the amazing thing about this is that you can have somebody sitting in their comfort of their own home, on their sofa, and actually be able to window shop for the first time. Traditional e-commerce today doesn't allow you to do so many things that you can do in the bricks and mortars world, where you can walk down Lincoln Road and window shop, enter from shop A to shop B. That experience doesn't exist because shopping online today is a premeditated activity. I need to buy a pair of trousers, and I do a search, and I go in and purchase. What we're bringing with Avenue Planet is the ability to take the best of what we have in the bricks and mortar world into the digital era. And what's amazing about Avenue Planet and this new technology with virtual reality is that if we look at, the way people are on a daily basis, we spend a third of our day sleeping, we spend a third of our day working, and it's the other third of the part of the day where we can actually interact and communicate and acquire products and services. Interestingly, the revolution, the technological revolution has happened in certain areas. For example, the communication with your immediate network, your family, your close friends, your loved ones, that's happened. We've had WhatsApp, we've had iMessaging, we've had Skype. You look at your extended network, you've got the contacts that you make in the business world, your acquaintances, your wider network, the groups you have associations with. That revolution has happened as well. That's Facebook, that's Twitter, that's LinkedIn, and the likes. What's missing is the technological revolution in e-commerce. If you look at what shopping is online today, it hasn't changed. It's the same 2D experience. You've got your bar on top, you've got your categories on the left, you click on an item, you see a picture, you get a description, an option to purchase. With Avenue Planet and the introduction of virtual reality and the devices that are on the market today, we're able to actually teleport and transport people with a single click of a button into Fifth Avenue in New York or Ginza in Tokyo and give them a truly immersive experience, taking the best of what's out there in the real world. And for us, it's amazing to see all these new devices come to market and see all these different applications and the way we can improve the offerings we have. Because from our perspective, what we want to do is take the great technologies out there, take the need of the users to be able to shop online and acquire products and services in the most attractive way possible. So again, Avenue Planet is redefining shopping, it's e-commerce experience, and we believe that this is going to be the application that the world is going to take by storm. Roll the video. For those here, we're outside and we'd love for you to actually really experience being inside Avenue Planet.
So it's kind of an astonishing breadth of experience up here. I'd like to start, if I could, by addressing some of the vets, Elizabeth, Mats, and Dan. You've all been more than 15 years doing this. It's a new platform for a lot of people, whether that's because of the bus running Oculus or Google Glass or what have you. What feels different to you about this time? And is this the one that's going to stick?
Yeah, so if I'll start. We've been doing this for a while, and you can see the ups and downs of technology. And I think what's really different this time is one, the breadth of the hardware options that are out there. And also if you look at the players that are active, like Facebook and Samsung, and all of the big ones. The other thing is connectivity. It's really easy to get access to the content today. So for instance, we published our Eon Experience library, which is primarily for education, and you have 5,000 applications you can put to use, and they're right there, and you can get to them. And then I think the drastic improvements in terms of the visual quality, especially when you consider the price. I mean, when we started doing virtual reality 15 years ago, you paid $1 million for the computer, or two, and you know, a couple of $100,000 for the headset. And today it's $99. We have one that's a cardboard out in the hallway, so it's really, really accessible. And the quality is, you know, even for design, you might not be able to do everything you want, but the quality is definitely good enough. So now, I think the thing that's going to make this stick is going to solely lie in the applications, I think. That's where the push has to be. And I really applaud the Seek project to take that brave step into the social media, VR applications. It's really exciting.
Thanks, Eon. Eon is our partner in the development of Seek, so we've been working hand in hand, so we're patting you on the back as well.
I don't know.
Well, I could add to that and say that I think one of the things that's different is some of the standards that are developing. And before it was the Wild West for VR, and everybody had a different flavor, and you didn't know which way was the right way. And when I first started working my first application in VR, we were limited to 60,000 polygons, and we were getting between 2 and 6 frames a second. And we had to decimate the data just to make it viable to even look at on a really awful display. And so, and that was like we were saying on an Onyx 3200 or something. It was like $1 million computer that but it was awful. But it was the best we had. But there weren't any standards that allowed us to efficiently use the technology. And so now there's graphics standards, and there's some really good hardware that's coming out that's taking advantage of the software. And before, it seemed like we had this great hardware and then no software to take advantage of this hardware. Like 64-bit came, and I'm like, when is someone going to develop a 64-bit app that I can use with my stuff? And it took a couple years. It was like so frustrating. And so now I think the hardware is lagging a little bit behind all the cool content that's coming out. So, but I think one of the things that I think is exciting as far as why it's a little different this time is the scope and the scale, and also your personal connection to your virtual environment is way better than it's ever been in the past. And you know what we're seeing over there, and what we have with Google, some of the Google Glass stuff even, is there's a little bit of connection there, and Oculus, and you know the Zeiss thing. It's so much easier to look and understand and really feel personally connected to the virtual data that you're seeing. And I think that's one of the biggest differences.
You know, it's funny because I was talking to an analyst, and the analyst was asking about market size. And one of the things they said was, well, this is nothing like the cellular industry. And they were trying to compare it, that growth within this industry was going to be much slower than the cellular industry. And I said, well, time out, wait a minute. I said, we're projecting $30 to $50 billion between, 2018 and 2020. Look at this industry today. Almost every major corporation in the world, and not counting the vendors here that are supporting it, are involved in augmented reality and virtual reality. That's quite different than what it was back for the cellular days, when everybody first looked at the guy with a cell phone going, what's that in his hand? Is it a brick? But that doesn't exist. And the hardware now has changed the dynamic. So we have a lot of content that's being developed. We have a lot of software applications that are being developed. And as Elizabeth just said, the hardware is catching up. In our world, we announced this year, instead of the big bulky things, even things like Google Glass that's hanging off your head, and this is one of them, this is our M100 that hangs off your head. But here's the nuance that's coming out this year. I can put these on, and you're not going to know that I have a pair of smart glasses on. This changes the concept. This now opens the door for consumers to be happy wearing smart glasses, right? Forget about, that's not even counting all my industrial customers that we're using, but now when you have something that's small, it's light, and it's a wearable computing system that doesn't make you look like a geek, you're finally going to move forward in it.
And I think we should point out here that one of the big differences between augmented and virtual reality here is form factor. Virtual reality is not really meant to be out and about. You're going to look a little crazy wearing this on, and you're also not going to be able to see the world, so there's some danger. But with AR systems, you know, you're interacting with people as you would be, so you can kind of have something lighter weight. So that's kind of on the hardware side. But Sanjay and Mary, you're both developing kind of consumer applications, and so this is the thing, like the monetization of this is not quite borne out as much as hardware has. We can see an appetite for people buying hardware units, but we're still in the very early days of sales and usage and install base for consumer apps. So what type of growth do you both see over the next year or two for people to be kind of really coming into the marketplace?
You know, I think that for a lot of the VR applications, you know, mobile is going to drive a lot of the mainstream adoption because it's so much easier to be able to take your mobile phone that you already have, slip it into something like the Zeiss or maybe even the cardboard and have access to different applications. So that level of accessibility, I mean, each year 1 billion phones ship out globally, and for most of those people, getting those mobile phones, that's their first computing device, it's their first communications device. So, and having partners like a Samsung that already has 600 million of those phones, also behind VR. So now it's the opportunity to put this content in front of the largest, you know, footprint that you can find. And I think, you know, people are looking for these first experiences, and once they experience VR in this way, they want to move on to the next level, and they want more and more content, which is what our experience has been. We're building into our platform, for example, the ability to do in-app purchases. So you would have free content, and then you will also be able to make, you know, in-app purchases just directly off your phone. So I think that's where we're going to see the largest growth, and that's also why we're focusing on giving people the tools to be able to, because right now if I put on, you know, if I put my phone in there and I put on some kind of cardboard and I can't rotate or I can't walk in the experience, which is still missing, then until we make that experience complete, you know, making it as easy as, you know, TV is so popular because it's easy, you turn it on and it's there. And we have to get to where it's easy for people. We give them the tools, a complete tool set that allows them to experience it, and then I think the content is going to drive it.
So I think from our perspective, you know, kind of following the lines of what Mary's saying, is that there's one side of the monetization, which is the hardware. And, you know, it is, you know, as Matt said, the kind of price points that we're seeing that are going to basically drive adoption in the consumer market. From a content perspective, what our focus is that we're actually utilizing the same monetization rules that are existing today in the 2D world. So if you look at e-commerce, that business model exists today, we're going to replicate that. But what's more important with Avenue Planet is that we're actually taking the existing business models that exist in the real world, where people are opening up physical malls or opening up, you know, new streets with shops, and adopting that. Because unlike what you see today, where there's a huge disconnect between how a brand perceives their digital setup and their existing bricks and mortar setup, we're trying to basically break that gap. Because ultimately, if you look at how we're positioning this, is the same way that you have to design a physical store, you have to design a store in Avenue Planet, and in the same way you have to lay out that store and decide where you want to put your various top-selling products, how you want to basically dress up your window. It all has to, that's all the same type of activities you would do in the real world, and all of that has an associated cost to it. We're just basically adopting the digital version of that. So from our perspective, the monetization is going to happen because people understand already what the business models are, both from the brand perspective as well as from the consumer perspective. Who are now, you know, the kind of the adoption of consumers buying products online is growing day by day, and even markets where there has been a reluctancy to actually purchase items online, that is now breaking down. So we expect people wanting to have that experience, and it's through these devices and this capability of having a much more immersive experience where you don't need to physically go into a shop is where this is going to drive the revenue.
There was a great market study that came out a couple of months ago by Markets and Markets, and they looked at the adoption of mobile devices that has sensors that can support AR and VR. And there's a lot of them today, but here's the thing, in the next 7 years, I believe 2022, it's going to approach 5 billion devices shipped per year that support AR and VR as these become much more broadly used. So that's an interesting number just to think about, and I think at the end of the day, it's going to be consumer applications that drive this.
It's interesting. Recently I was at the Consumer Electronics Show a few weeks ago, and I was walking around the stands, which happen to have a lot of the new innovative technologies. The number of sensor companies that are out there is huge. And what's interesting here is that if you think about the use of these sensors in AR and VR and the hardware and the software world. So imagine now, let's just say you're a gamer. You put on a patch that's looking at your heart rate, looking at your respiratory rate. It's transmitting the data up to your glasses. It's interacting with the software on your game, and all of a sudden it says, hey, this guy isn't excited enough. I better throw something into that game that's really going to get him going, right? So you can change the whole dynamics of what's been done before just by the use of these sensors that are coming out there.
There's so much promise, but I want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the challenges. And each platform, augmented and virtual reality, they kind of each have their own set of technical hurdles. So I'd like to get into that a bit if we could. Mary and Sanjay on the VR side, coming early to it, what are you finding are the technical obstacles that you really are looking out for the most?
For example, the resolution on the headset, when we started out, our first development was for the DK1, which, we were aware that the resolution wasn't where we wanted it to be.
Just to point out, just for people who aren't aware, for speaking in acronyms, DK1 was the first development kit that Oculus released. It was followed up by, there's DK2, and then we refer to the forthcoming consumer version as CV1, in case we start using those.
So we were very much, aware when we developed the first version. Like, people look at it and they go, oh, okay, it's great, and so that was like one of the challenges. And then the Gear VR, which is the Samsung version of the virtual reality headset, that came out, which in my opinion is the most superior experience that's out there right now. So seeing that and having the ability to watch a concert, without the uneasiness and all of that. So it's been about the devices, finding the right ones. That's been one of the challenges. The other thing is, what's been talked about is the formats, coming up with standards, because developing a platform, if we have to support 20 different devices, it becomes very, very difficult. And so fortunately, Neil, who's part of the Immersive Technology Alliance, they've started a standards board, which I'm part of, and what we're doing is bringing the industry together to come up with standards so that everyone can create their own headsets, but for the consumer and for the content creator, you don't have to worry about those because there are a certain set of standards, which, I saw this with digital cinema. The first go-round of digital cinema didn't fly because there were no standards, so you had different studios and everyone was trying to do it differently. But once they came up with the DCP standards and DCI, which were all, everyone was now operating from the same sheet of paper, and we all faced the industry as a whole rather than, fragments, which is what we're seeing now with VR and hopefully with AR as well. And I think those are some of the challenges, and we're solving those.
How about augmented reality? What in particular, because you are not placing someone somewhere totally alien, and because their experience isn't dependent, in AR, their experience is dependent on the real world. So you lose the kind of simulator sickness potential, but I imagine there's other problems in AR.
Sure. I think in the AR world and also in the VR world, there are issues, such as prism-based optics versus something else. Today, look at. I'll first talk about VR, and then I'll talk about AR first and compare them. But today, this is one of our units. It's a VR AR headset. It has 2 cameras built in it. You've got the Oculus and some of the other products that are out here too. But the bulk of these, you can see, the bigger your field of view, the more immersion you want, the bigger these things get. And that's because it's using an optical technologies that is either projector-based or prism-based or some combination of all of those. It requires a lot of bulk. So one of the things that we have done, and this is on the AR and VR side, is to try to look at optical techniques to give you wider field of view and more immersive capability without the bulk. And that's where, if you really want to get to an environment where you can put on a pair of glasses, whether you're doing VR or AR, walk around the room and do all the things that you would like to do without stumbling over yourself and falling to the ground, you need to change the old optical systems. I mean, those optical systems have been around for a long time. And so that's one of the things that we've done, this year for VR, which is, I showed you these just a few minutes ago, but this is actually the optical engine, okay? So what we have here is we actually have an optical device here, very small, that feeds in here, and the light bounces around in between the surfaces of the lens. So imagine duplicating this for an immersive experience. Sure, the lenses will grow bigger, but the thickness stays the same. And that provides lots of benefits for reducing the industrial design complexity and clunkiness that we have today. So that's a big challenge I think, for both industries, industrial design, optics. Batteries are the other big thing. Nobody wants to be plugged in, and hopefully somebody will come up with your own nuclear power plant of things you can run these things with.
I'd like to add to that.
Yeah.
There's like a spectrum of total virtual reality to total reality, right? And then augmented reality is somewhere in there. And so you can present an environment to somebody that's on that spectrum. And so we do a lot of work that's just total virtual reality. We do some virtual reality, like I described, where you physically touch, but you only see. And then we do some virtual augmented reality where we present both worlds to the user. And one of the biggest challenges that we face is the complexity of the eye. And when you present a virtual image and a physical image, and your eyes have this insane ability to do all kinds of cool stuff to converge and toe in. I mean, your eyes go like this, right? If you look at something close, they go in. Your muscles are squishing your eyeballs, and all these things are happening, and the view frustrums are changing dynamically. There's nothing out there in the marketplace here or anywhere out there that will do that. So when we're combining those two worlds together, there's a lot of room for miscues that'll cause sim sickness. And even though, like Peter, you pointed out, when you have the physical world, sometimes you're less likely to believe the evaluation, even though it doesn't make you, sick, basically. I mean, that's just a really plain way to say it. But if you look at something and you're like, that doesn't line up anymore because your eyes are doing something that your device can't also emulate, then, you've kind of lost it. So.
And Elizabeth, you and I were actually also talking, and you mentioned a couple of other things. We think about adverse reactions to this stuff as being chiefly physical, but you had said that, you've seen in your time everything from kind of cultural problems to psychological adverse reactions. And if you could talk about that a bit, and what kind of concerns we should be looking out for.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when we were walking back and I was getting mic'd up, just having this thing on me, I'm like, it was just something that's not part of what you do normally walking around. And so it took me a second, like, I have this thing on my head. And so that's something different, and we're all sitting here, we all have it on our head, so it's kind of like our little normal way we're behaving right now. But in certain environments, if you start putting devices on people, it changes the way they interact. And if in my work at Ford, because we'll have people come in and they're at various, it's a hierarchy, right? So you get the big cheese guy comes in and there's an entourage and the whole thing. If you cover their eyes and you're telling them, okay, make an evaluation, tell me what it's like. Their reality has changed because they're seeing something, but there's a lot of psychology that goes on with me looking at Mary and us interacting, and I can give her a look and then she's like, oh, I get it. But when you're doing this, I go to give her a look and it doesn't matter, so she doesn't know what I mean by my eyes. So there's a cultural component, and the norm kind of has to change. And I think the adoption at Ford, the best way that it changed was the senior leadership seeing the value, and then learning to work with that. So, and once the senior leadership said, I'm good, man, I'm getting so much value out of this, like the uneasiness of wearing something on you, or looking dorky with, like, you feel like an alien because you have all these markers all over your head, that really did go away. But there is a component, and if we're not aware and thinking about that people could make, like not want to try something or not make a decision because of those things, then we've failed our user base. So we really need to take those things into account.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. One of the things that, I also realized, like with a lot of the experiences, it didn't feel very social. Like, who wants to be on the moon alone, right? So one of the things that we've done with our platform is it's very social. And with Matt and I, what we're developing for the next generation of the platform is not only the ability to see other people within the experience. So if I want to go watch a movie, actually simulate the communal experience of being at a movie, I could do that. I can look at the person across me, I can smile at them, we can smile. What are the other things that, we're bringing a lot of, very simple gestures. You could wave at them. And so that really helps with part of the social aspect of being within.
So are we talking about simulations of yourself or kind of cartoonish avatars that you're assuming in this space?
Yeah, we're starting with, more cartoonish, but our ultimate goal is to continue to get more and more photorealistic. So we have a version of Peter Rubin sitting next to Sanjay, right? So, we can actually have this experience virtually, and you can look at, the person next to you and smile.
Yeah, there's a lot of capture technology that's really becoming much more easy to use, where you can do things like that. But just to add one thing to the discussion, one thing where we're spending a lot of time at Eon that I also think will really help to kind of bring down some of these barriers that exist to some extent in terms of obtrusiveness and so forth, is to create much more richer interaction. You just don't want to watch a space. As humans, we want to interact, we want to touch, we want to pick up things. So I think, one of the things that's making headway in the hardware space, but probably needs, more development, is natural interfaces for hand interaction. Natural interfaces for AR, that's an area where we've done a lot of work and kind of bringing in some of the VR methodologies to the AR platform, something we call Eon Knowledge Builder. It's more B2B, assembly, disassembly, technical procedures. But I think no matter how you do it, or voice recognition like we're going to have in Seek, no matter how you do it, you want to bring in the interaction. And then I think, a lot of those barriers start to break down.
So there's a few things. I think what Elizabeth touched on, which is, I think, very important, is that if you can establish the value for the end user, then there's a much more of an acceptance to using that type of hardware. So that's one thing we see clearly, is that, when we were first, our initial experiences, which is, again, not too long ago with virtual reality, some of the stuff that we were showcasing was not Avenue Planet, it was just kind of other random applications, where people didn't see the value. But the minute that they actually were able to immerse themselves into Avenue Planet and actually see the shops and have that entire immersive experience, that changed. That device no longer became an inherent. And then the second aspect, as Mary touched upon, is the interaction with other people. And we realize that that's very important, because shopping is a social activity. And e-commerce has basically completely moved that, because it's me and my machine and communicating with a brand through the digital medium. So what we have done as well is in the first stage, is to incorporate video technology in order to allow multiple people to share that experience with you. Because what then it does, it actually does two things. It increases the adoption of the product and the technology, the acceptance of it, but more importantly, actually assists the user and the brand. Because statistics show that if I go buy something with more people, then my judgment of what I purchase is going to be better, and the chance of returning products is going to go down. So it kind of benefits everybody. So what we're looking for is, I'm glad that you're coming up with this, is that we want to be able to find a way where, we do not want, and at the end of the day, the goal objective of Avenue Planet is the e-commerce side, and is actually people acquiring products and services. We do not want it to be a place where you are deep, like it's a game, the concept of having second life and stuff. But what we still want to be able to do is that people can have that social interaction within the platform. So, it's interesting to hear that there are other advances coming. The touch thing is something that we're very, very intrigued about. So, look forward to seeing kind of that development come in the near future for us to enhance that experience in our platform.
So I do want to take the last few minutes to open it up to questions if we have some. Before we do that, I'd like to just go around and ask each of you what 2015 holds for immersive tech, what you are personally most excited about.
So for us, immersive tech, we have some new products that are coming out for immersive technology, and it's combined with AR, so we're doing a combination of those. We actually expect to see a lot of growth, continued growth in the existing market of gaming, but we also see a lot of growth in our industrial base that needs both AR and VR combinations to do their work.
I have a couple things that I'm super excited about. One is kind of the social aspect, the collaboration with any site, anywhere, and looking at something and understanding things all around the world at the same time. That will be coming in full force next year, or this year, so that's exciting. Another thing that we're always just so laser focused on is just the look of the data, just beautiful, compelling data that's has reflections and beautiful colors and orange peel in the paint and all those little aspects that make what you're looking at look real. So we're really pushing the bounds of what we call visual fidelity. And then I'm very interested in sound, because I think that in the interior of a vehicle, you need to feel like you're in a cabin. And so that's another 2015.
So I'm interested in, I'm very excited about a couple of things as well. The first one being the mobile, all the mobile devices, mobile-enabled devices that are coming out there, and the massive reach that's going to allow for us as a company and then as an industry to be able to get VR out there. So I'm very, very excited about that. I'm also excited about audio, because in VR, audio has been such an afterthought up until now, and so I'm excited about the opportunity to get seekers out there and to complete the experience so people can hear audio in a 360 environment and a 3D environment the way it's supposed to be. So those are the two things that I'm excited about, mobile VR and audio.
Okay, I think from my side, we're first and foremost really excited about working with a lot of our partners, developing some great applications during this year, like the Seek, but also in B2B applications. We've been doing a lot of work in the energy sector, for instance, for years and years with big caves and power walls. And the exciting thing is now that we can take this content that's already developed, and for the guy that's out on the drilling rig that has 12 hours a day downtime, they can use his mobile devices and do training and refresher and so forth. So, and then it's all about mobile, no doubt about it. We've gone from kind of the workstation modality. It will be there in niche applications, but it's all about the mobile. So I agree.
So from our perspective, what I'm most excited about is actually having these devices in the household. I think ultimately for us, there's some great B2B applications, but where we want to see this is actually that people in their homes are actually using this on a day-to-day basis, like they use their mobile phones today, or their smart TVs or their tablets. And I think it's the advances in the devices, including sound and other aspects, and the size and the dimension and the ability to take a mobile phone and slot it into a VR device and give that full experience. That's what we're excited about. And for us, the second thing that we're excited about is actually, bringing Avenue Planet to the market this year. So 2015 is a big year for us. And I'm looking forward to kind of, working with the other people in the ecosystem to help drive a much better experience, which is what this is all about. It's bringing the best experience you can to the end user. And for us, the consumer is key here.
So I want to open up the floor. Okay, all right. Just above the barrier in the sweater and scarf? Yes. I guess just shout it out. I don't think we have mics set up.
All right, my name is Jessica Kazorek. I own a video production company. I was actually so inspired by your talk that I just went online and bought the Google Cardboard. So I'll be playing with it in my house. But my question for you is, we saw a lot of animation, and when it comes to virtual reality and putting stuff on these devices, a lot of people who are in video are like, oh, we can't really touch that, it's so expensive, the cameras, there's such a giant leap in the production, the hardware and the software. What is your advice to people who want to start playing with this? How can we take sort of the existing cameras, the DSLR technology we have now, and maybe, you know, make parallax and do some sort of tricks so that we can experiment with the devices without having to really, you know, go overboard with buying new equipment?
I think a lot of what we saw was all in the 3D environment, but there is a lot also that we're doing with 360 video. Actually, we have a 360 rig right here that's recording. It's for, Adrian, how many? Six GoPro cameras. So there is a lot that can be done with some of these newer rigs and the existing, you know, video cameras that we have. Coming up with 360 content, which I think is also going to be a huge part of the influx of content that you see. There's so many 360 cameras that are coming out, and you know, soon we're going to be seeing the YouTube type of growth, even with 360 content. It's already coming, so that's a great place to start.
I just want to add to that I think recently Samsung announced that this is kind of in hand with the Gear VR. Unit is developing a kind of a filmmaker tool, which is kind of a more compact multi-camera array. But you know, people are doing it, like Mary said, everything from GoPros to multiple Red Dragons put together. It's, you know, and a lot of proprietary stuff. So I think that that's one place where we could use some standards as well, maybe to make it a little bit easier on everyone rushing to get their own solution.
Yes, Elizabeth, you talked about using VR as helping you in designing cars. In terms of product production, how much time is saved using your system, and is there really a major cost savings per car? What is it? And lastly, when will this application be available for your potential end users to customize vehicles?
So the first question, as far as time, it's we've said that it saves 7 to 12 months off the development cycle of a vehicle. And vehicle development, just depending on if it's like from scratch or, you know, like a refresh of a previous model, is anywhere from 2 to 5 years. It really depends. 5 years is pretty extreme now, but you know, that is the range. And then as far as cost savings, I don't have a per vehicle cost because I just don't know it. But we'll do a study and we'll save hundreds of thousands of dollars on one study. And I'm not saying every study does that, but it's a phenomenal savings. And the value that we get is has been so recognized and appreciated that our centers are growing. So we have this, our stuff is called FIVE, Forward Immersive Vehicle Environment. So we started out with a lab in Dearborn, put a lab in Australia. We're putting another lab just down the hall in the same building in Dearborn to handle overflow from the first lab, putting one in Germany. We have satellite centers in India, China, Mexico, and Brazil. So the technology is exploding and it's out there. And as far as your question, I think it was like if you either wanted to experience at home or go to a dealership and kind of go through options and write somebody and tell them that you want that. So I have a white paper on that, and I would love to do that. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a good way of also getting like feedback from consumers on what they value and what options they pick if they could just choose anything.
It's a form of specialty niche marketing.
Yes.
That can explode.
Oh, I
there
agree.
is one company that I think is playing with this.
So maybe this will help Elizabeth with ammo to go back to Ford with, but Audi actually operates 3 showrooms around the world right now where you can build your own car. You step in, it's a virtual world, you start putting parts up on the screen and you build your car. And I was talking with the manager in the UK office of that facility, He told me that for every car that gets built there by the customer, that customer adds another 10 to 20,000 pounds British sterling in options to that car. So the payback is huge. In terms of other, I wish this conference was actually next week, because one of my largest customers in the world is about ready to make some announcements, but they did a long study, and I unfortunately can't tell you what industry right yet, but 30% productivity increases by using augmented reality. And once they make that announcement, there's going to be a lot of other companies that are going to start kicking up the ratchet quite a bit.
Dan, just mentioning your film in the beginning, where you have this lady laying on a chaise lounge or sofa, it should really be, why get out of bed? Because the point is, all of this could be done from your bed.
Yeah, so did you see the virtual exercise program where you lose weight?
Yeah, talk about that. I have been on a bike. I have been on a real bike riding through Westeros from Game of Thrones. There is a company in Italy that's working on a cycling trainer that works with Oculus. I wish we had time. We have so many questions. We unfortunately have to cut it here, but I know that everyone here will be around today, so feel free to approach if you have any particular questions. Thanks so much, and thanks to our panelists.